enable you as speakers. Okay, so we've got one. First one from Athens Dog 98. If you could add any player currently on a roster that's not from an SEC team to this Georgia roster, who and why? John, fire away.
Yeah, I was gonna let you take that one first.
That's a tough one, man.
It's so tough.
I think Georgia, with what's happening with Michael Williams, and it sounds like Marvin Jones Jr. is starting to flash in camp. Like, I think they're gonna, Robert Beal, Nolan Smith. I think they're gonna have some good stuff off of the edge, but I think like that would either be the spot or maybe another really good boundary corner to go opposite of Keely Ringo. I think if you had that, it would make this defense pretty salty. I think it's going to be salty anyways, but I think that would be very tough to deal with.
Yeah, I think for me, I would go with a boundary corner. I'm gonna, I'm looking for somebody on the other side of Keely Ringo. The kid from Utah, Phillips, I can't remember his name, but that kid is really, really, really good. But I would go with somebody like that. We could also solidify a left guard if we want to do that. There's a couple of positions that I think are being battled out, that if you could just pluck a player from any team, any non-SEC team, that's probably what I would go with.
I think that's fair. I'm trying to think a little bit, like Joey Porter Jr. at Ohio State. He would be a good one. Yeah, I mean, it's tough when you talk about no SEC teams, because like I think Eli Ricks would actually probably be the most logical answer.
That's where I was gonna say that, and then I saw the clarification on no SEC, and I was like, damn it, because that's who I would go for, to be honest.
But yeah,
damn you, Chris Marler and your Bama fandom. I see you in here.
He's lurking for anger fuel. I'm just playing with you, Chris. We love you. All right, let's take this next one. If you could add any team to the schedule this season for a home game, which team would you want to see Georgia play?
Who you going with?
I take Ohio State.
Ohio State, okay. That's a pretty big ask, I feel like.
There's two angles, right?
The tickets would be outrageous in Athens for that game.
Yeah. Well, there's two angles to this question. So the question is, which non-SEC team would you want to see Georgia play at home this season? You could take the angle of you want an Ohio State, right? I think as just a college football fan, I think seeing that game in Sanford Stadium would be absolutely incredible. As a Georgia fan, I don't know that I want that. I think for me, I don't know. Do you want a guaranteed win? Do you want something that's going to be in the? I think strategically, how do you answer this question is important.
Hey, I would give you an outside the box answer. How about we get Jackson State?
That would be fun. That would be a lot of fun, actually. Deion coming to town.
Yeah,
I think that would be interesting. I was going to say USC, actually, just because, great intersectional matchup. I'm not even sure if Georgia and USC have ever played each other, but I think that Georgia would probably rip them to shreds with that shaky offensive line they have, and then we wouldn't have to listen to months of USC hype on television. So it would be a favor for everyone.
Well, I would, the deep down dark side of me would want to see Clemson come in and just beat them like a drum in Sanford Stadium. But that's because my hatred for Clemson.
Fair enough. Okay, moving on. Biggity Ben asks, will Kenny McIntosh return kicks? And if not, who would you suppose will? I think that we will see him on at least kick return. the same user also asks about punt returns as well. I think we will see McIntosh do some things on kick return, but it is a risk for sure. But if you look at his track record of returning kicks in his career, he's been very, very, very good. I think you'll see Ringo back on some punts. I know that they have at least drilled him there. So I'm going back to spring practice. You may also see a little bit of Lad McConkey on punt team, which I think is a very interesting possibility. As far as kick returns go, I am curious to see sort of who else emerges in that role, if they will go with a speedy defensive back type or what. Any thoughts from my co-host?
No, I think you answered that one. Yeah, that one's pretty interesting to think about, but I think it's going to be more straightforward than not.
Yeah, I mean, Kirby's been pretty consistent throughout his time at Georgia of playing first teamers and important guys on special teams. I do think with the way that kickoffs are now, where you can call the fair catch inside the 25, like there's a lot less risk with putting some of your most electric players back there, just because if it's a situation where they don't see an opportunity for a good return or where they're about to get blown up, they can just wave that hand and kind of bail out of it, and you're no worse for the wear starting at the 25. So, yeah, I think you'll continue to see those important players back on kick returns. Another interesting question from Ben is in Georgia's defensive scheme, does Kirby value the inside linebacker more or the outside linebacker? In other words, if you have a guy like Smeal Mondon or Xavier Sori that can likely do both, does Kirby take those guys for inside linebackers due to our scheme? I've got an opinion on this, but I'm going to let you guys fire away first.
Yeah, why don't you go with your opinion?
Yeah, I've got trying multiple windows open, trying to make sure everything's working on the stream. So let me catch up and take a breath. But yeah, and we're getting questions in the YouTube. So if you guys are,
we'll take those after we do our subscriber questions.
Yeah, exactly. Stay in there, guys.
Okay, cool. So I think it's inside linebacker. That's a tough one though. I mean, I think it really depends on the skills of the player. I think when you look over the last 5-6 years during Smart's tenure in Athens, that inside linebacker position is usually kind of the quarterback of the defense, so to speak. Last year, Nakobe Dean was the guy that everyone looked to when they weren't sure what they were supposed to be doing. Especially when Georgia stays in its base package more than a lot of teams do. And so I think they value the ability to cover in pass situations at inside linebacker, maybe more than some others. I think they have to have inside linebackers who can, go out with a running back or a tight end. And if you go and look at, who covered snaps in the slot last year, you will see a lot of Quay Walker, Nakobe Dean, Channing Tindall. Like those three guys went and covered the slot position for the offense in, quite a few situations, and actually did a pretty daggone good job of it. I think the outside linebacker position, similar, you do have to be able to cover those running backs downfield, the wheel routes and all of that stuff. I mean, we remember when Florida kind of took advantage of Georgia's outside linebackers and inside linebackers with some of that stuff in 2020. But I think your outside linebackers, really, they have to be able to rush the passer, and then after that, all these other things come into play. But the priority is first and foremost being able to set edges and then get into the backfield on third and long situations.
Yeah, my answer is I don't think Kirby values one more than the other. of any position, to be frank. But I do think schematically, your points are right. I think the way that they've recruited at that inside linebacker position, Glenn Schumann calls it the off backer position, the off ball backer position. Now these days, because of all that they're asked to do from that spot, it's not just inside for sure.
Fair enough. All right, we've got Jason in here with us now. If you guys are not familiar with Jason, he is our somewhat silent behind the scenes recruiting expert. So I'm gonna fire a couple of recruiting questions at Jason. Jason, is Georgia getting Quay Russaw or Smith back on campus? Their recruiting is very quiet. Would really like Kirby to bring them both to Athens, and that is from our good friend Woodstock.
Yeah, well, they already took their official, so it would have to be an unofficial. And they haven't taken their official to Alabama yet. That's going to be a big one. And to be honest, I think we want Quay more than we do James Smith. And again, just to be honest, I've seen James Smith play twice, and I had to ask who he was.
That is very honest. All right. Thank you for your candor. Who do you see? This is a tough one, and I'm almost hesitant to ask it, but we do try to take all comers here. Who do you see being the next 3 UGA commits?
Oh, let's see. Let me go Anthony Evans. Julian Sayin.
That's a boom.
Yeah, that's a boom. I would say.
You might not want to say the third one, Jason. You might want to leave that one on the website.
Yeah, give me a second on the third one.
That's all right. That was 2 very, very, I'm sure, exciting answers for Georgia fans.
Maybe Tyler
and
Williams.
Real quick, I'll go ahead and say who won't be. It won't be Tavion Gatson, who committed to Florida State. It won't be Kelby Collins, who's going probably Florida, but I still think he ends up at Alabama eventually. And it won't be, which this one kind of hurts me, I don't think it will be Cameron James either. I think Florida got on him early and did really, really well there. So I don't think it's going to be James.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you for that update. Moving back, I guess, a little more to present Georgia players. Are you concerned about Georgia's physicality in the secondary without Lewis Seen or Latavius Burney? Christopher Smith, Dan Jackson, and William Poole are all solid players, but none of them are as physically imposing as someone like Lewis Seen.
I would say watch out for Malachi Starks there, too. I wouldn't think so much in the beginning of the season, but I would say that would be a name to watch out midway through the season.
Yeah, I mean, it's really according to who we're talking about being back there. I think they're still, working on playing time. And, I mean, of course, you have, Lassiter across from Ringo now. And, I mean, you're talking Bullard possibly getting playing time. You're talking about David Daniels been running with the 2s. He'll knock the living crap out of you. So, I mean, it's really that first team. I think you're going to see William Poole be more aggressive now. And I'm not worried about Chris Smith not being aggressive. So, and especially when we get the other guys, because, I mean, it's not just going to be those 5 starters. I think as far as like Lewis Seen heavy hitters, to get more of a player like that, I think you're going to have to get to like Bullard and David Daniel.
Yeah, I do think William Poole, I think, is actually a little bit more of an imposing physical presence than a lot of people might realize. Not as many folks have talked about him as much this offseason, and I get it. He's been in the program, 5-6 years now, but he really held up well in Indianapolis. And I mean, when he was in man coverage last year, he got tested a lot. He was targeted once every 4.8 snaps when playing man coverage. And I mean, they left him on that island in man coverage for the national title game. And, that 3rd and 10 breakup he made right after Georgia went up on the A.D. Mitchell touchdown catch was a huge play, right? So I think, he has the size to come down and run support and do very well. Christopher Smith, we've seen him do all those things and run support. I also think, Dustin, you mentioned Malachi Starks, but yeah, I mean, I think we could see him in some, 6 kind of DB, like some nickel or some dime and quarter packages as soon as the Oregon game, depending on down distance situation. And you'll remember that he was a guy that there was a lot of speculation Georgia might try to play at linebacker. So he definitely has the size and the ability to come up and wrap up and hit people. But it'll be something to watch for sure. But just kind of historically speaking, with Muschamp and Kirby Smart back there, you can kind of expect a pretty physical mentality from your secondary.
Just to jump on your William Poole, I've got some stats up, man, because that's my name. 270 snaps, 75.3 PFF grade, 18 receptions on 27 targets for a 5.4 yards per target with 12 tackles and a pressure. That's pretty good. When you're talking about what we've lost in the secondary, to have that guy ready to step up, like you said, he's been in the program. So I think William Poole could be one of the guys we're going to lean on, and I think he's going to do well this year.
Agreed. Yeah, and I actually, if you haven't read the secondary position preview on Dawgs Central, go check that out. But one of the things that I put in that article was that he had a pass breakup on 19% of the plays where he was targeted. So, and he also did not draw a single pass interference flag last year. So you're talking about a guy who is really adept at playing the ball and not getting himself into pass interference trouble. So I think a very savvy corner in that regard.
And I think a lot of people's deal with Poole, which I was this way, I was butthurt for about a couple of weeks. What was the one bad game that he had? He got burnt bad. I mean, he got beat like he stole something.
You're talking about the SEC championship?
Yeah, I think it was. That's what oh my God, I was ready to kill him.
Yeah. I think the interesting
that stands out more. I think more than big game Alabama SEC championship. I think that stands out, and that's probably why people have more questions about Poole. But then, I mean, you look at it, the stats don't lie. So if we can get over the one game where he kind of got beat a little bit, then I'm not mad at him anymore. I mean, we won it all, so I mean, it's all good.
No, totally. I mean, when we were doing our preview stuff for the Orange Bowl, that was something that we talked a lot about, was like, is Georgia gonna, try to bring Christopher Smith down to that star position and, put Dan Jackson full time at the other safety spot opposite of Scene, and kind of talking through all those hypotheticals. And then, he went out against Michigan and played a really good game, played an even better game against Alabama. I get, that image of Jamison Williams, running down the field is obviously ingrained in some folks' minds. So I do understand where the hesitancy comes from. But like you just said, yeah, it's kind of hard to argue with the results over the college football playoff.
Well, and I guess that's really the thing with DBs, unless it's a Keely Ringo pick six. If they're not calling your name, then you're doing good. And so besides that one game, I mean, like you said, Michigan National Championship, you didn't really hear his name called much.
Right. Which is, yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's how you know a corner's doing his job, right? All right. This one is from What You Got, Lauren. Would an offensive line of Ernest Green, Xavier Trust, Warren Erickson, Dylan Fairchild, and Emarius Mims, that's Georgia's current second-team offensive line, be a better starting offensive line than most other first-string OLs in the SEC? I'll take a stab at it. I think it would be. Let's think. I mean, I think it'd be better. It would be better than what Missouri, Vanderbilt, better than what Auburn has right now, probably. I think it would probably be, middle of the pack to top, top half.
Yeah, I think it would be around 8th or 9th maybe in the SEC. I don't know that I don't know that I would say it would be better than most. I mean, I think, when you look at that list, absolute fantastic football players, but you got 3 of them that haven't had any real meaningful snaps in a consistent, season. One of them being a true freshman. But man, Georgia has recruited absolute depth at that offensive line, and I think that second team. It's a great question. It's a great thing to think about. I think the second team would be definitely in the, lower half of the top 10 out of 14 teams.
I think it's really according to, it's just like you said, are we talking experience and ready to go play now? Or are we talking potential? Because I think potential is easily the top half. But like you said,
easily. Yeah, I think the question is better to go play now, because the question was, would it be a better starting O-line than most other first strings in the SEC? But there are a few teams that that don't have that second level at offensive line that could stand up to that group that we just mentioned.
Fair enough. Okay. Next question. Do you see a pathway for Emarius Mims starting at any point in the 2022 season outside of injury? I guess for me, go ahead. George.
No, but you go for it. Go for
it. I've heard a lot of great things. We've talked about this over on the Dawgs Central forum. There's been good reports of, where Emarius Mims is physically and mentally since his little foray into the transfer portal. Like, seems like he's very focused and has been doing the right things in the weight room, in the classroom, all of that good stuff. And it is by all accounts looked good in practices. I just think, you're talking about a guy in Broderick Jones who came into a national championship game and shut down, Will Anderson for the most part, who was maybe the best player in college football last year. And you're talking about a guy in Warren McClendon who has just been absolutely rock solid for 2 seasons. I've always maintained that, there was that talk, I think, kind of last year at times, like, could Emarius Mims play guard? I don't think he's quite the right body type for it. I think, his future, both in college and the NFL, is at tackle. You never know. I know the question was outside of injury, but just, offensive line depth can get thin so quick in the SEC in particular, with the defensive lines you're facing week by week. So there could be a moment where he's called upon this season, but I don't at this time see him overtaking either Jones or McClendon to be the first team tackle in 2022.
to be honest, I think, okay, this is kind of part of the question. Number one, I think Warren McClendon never gets enough love for anybody, just because he's not 6'7", 340 pounds. That dude is, oh my God. I mean, he's just been as consistent as you can be. So, I mean, it's like you said, with those 2 in there, I don't think at tackle, no. And I think any chance he had at guard may have went away with Tate Ratledge coming back and playing, doing so well right now in the beginning. Because, I mean, you could see somebody, I mean, we have, Ben Cleveland at right guard. So, I mean, you could possibly see somebody his size out there at right guard maybe, like Cleveland was. But, I mean that's Tate's to lose. So, I think that may have hurt him if there was even a chance to play at guard.
Sounds good. All right. Let's see what else we got here.
We got a
Go ahead,
question.
John.
We got a question in the YouTube chat that I think Jason could probably take if we want to go there.
Yeah.
What's the general sentiment about Dale McGee's recruiting as of late? It seems like his recruiting may have slipped the last couple of years. The running back room isn't as dominant as you'd hope and expect at RBU. That question is from Andy Adams on YouTube. What do you think, Jason?
Well, honestly, the main thing about the way these teams recruit, it's easy to look at just the running back position and say, okay, it's not as great as it has been, or and all that. And I see where you're coming from with that. I mean, but realistically, how good of a shot is there to get Sony Michel and Nick Chubb every single year? There hasn't been a year since Sony Michel and Nick Chubb that we could have got a Sony Michel and Nick Chubb in the same year. So, I mean, that's the first thing. The second thing is these guys recruit by areas. So I mean, yes, of course, he's responsible for the running backs, but he's also responsible for Michael Williams, tons of the big Atlanta guys that have come in. I mean, when you go down the line from the time he's been here, going off the top of my head without just getting on a list and counting, it would not surprise me at all if he was responsible for 12, 15 5-stars that we brought in. So yeah, the running back position, okay, Sony Michel, Nick Chubb. I mean, we had Zeus, we had James Cook. So I mean, that's a pretty nasty duo right there. I mean, and I mean, you have Zeus, he gets hurt, then he gets hurt again. So, I mean, it's hard. I mean, I definitely see where the question's coming from, but then you have to look at his overall recruiting area also, and then look at the running backs that have come in that we had a shot at from the beginning. Like, okay, I mean, how many? And I'll go through all the list and put on the board who we missed on that maybe he should have gotten, and then I'll put on the board the amount of 5-stars that he's been responsible for, and I promise you, he's lifting his own weight and then some.
I got it. I want to pivot to a little bit in sort of a more general question. I mean, like, we've go ahead, Graham.
The only thing I was to say on that is just, as far as running back production last year, like Josh, you and I talked about this on the show a lot. Like, there were a lot of plays for Georgia's running backs in 2021 where they were having to make guys miss in the backfield, and they were really, there was not holes where they were supposed to be on the play call, and they were having to go and kind of make things happen in other parts of the line. So I do think that that's worth kind of remembering in all of this, is that all running backs look good when they're running behind, a very solid offensive line. And the middle of Georgia's line last year struggled at times. That was probably in my opinion, that was kind of the weakest point on the team, was the guard play. And, Van Pran was really young early in the year. Obviously, he's a stud and did very well as the season progressed. But there was a lot of kind of miscommunications and confusion in that middle three of the offensive line.
And that was kind of the point I was going to make too, is like, we've clamored for the more open offense, the more modern offense. So, the NFL is running back a lot by committee and just next guy up. I mean, I'm not going to say that they're not going to go after and want to bring 5 and highly rated 4-stars onto campus. But, if we're talking Todd Monken and we're praising this offensive and number 2 efficient most offense in the country last year in a national championship, maybe the priorities there. I'm asking if maybe we're seeing a sort of a pivot away from, spending resources, time, and trying to get these kids on campus and going and getting like the Brock Bowers and these these elite guys with balls and get their ball in their hands in space and stuff. I mean, it's just thought, but it doesn't bother me, if we're getting edge guys and we're getting D linemen and we're tight end U for the minute, I'll take that, and so we see multiple areas drop off. I'm not going to worry about recruiting, because I think we're still elite there.
Yeah, I mean, just the early returns on Andrew Paul and Branson Robinson have been very good through the first week of fall camp as well.
Yeah. Branson Robinson's a man.
Yeah, I think, the other side of it is also like the evaluation job that McGee and the rest of Georgia's staff did on Andrew Paul late in that cycle, going and finding a 3-star guy who, kind of was a little bit unknown until his senior year playing in Texas. And you get him on campus and he immediately looks the part. Now, I'm not saying those guys are going to break into that, rotation of Edwards and McIntosh and Milton immediately, because they got to learn how to pass protect before they're going to see any meaningful snaps. But still, like, Georgia has found themselves another running back duo. It just might not look how it has at certain times in the past where, both guys were 5 stars coming in. But I would bet you the production is going to be similar out of those two when it's all said and done with their careers in Athens.
And real quick, the guys, and we don't have to get into detail on certain names because some will make you laugh and some might make you cry, but Dale McGee's been responsible for Justin Fields, Mikael Williams, Zamir White, Jamari Sawyer, Broderick Jones, Brenton Cox, A.J. Harris, DeAndre Swift, Smile Munden, Blaylock, Andrew Thomas, Cook, Milton, Robinson, Burt, and Kristen Miller. I mean, the list goes on and on and on and on and on. And I assume part of the reason for that question would be Justice Haynes. And honestly, the Justice Haynes deal I don't even know how to explain it. It's one of the biggest surprises probably in recruiting history.
There you go. All right, we're going to open this up to you guys. So if you want to jump in here and ask a question, just request to speak. I see a couple of you have already. AJ, I'm about to add you as a speaker. So as soon as you get in here, make sure you unmute your mic, and the floor is yours. AJ, you are on.
Hey, Graham.
There you go. Hey.
So when you think about the past 4 or 5 years when we had Swift, Harrion, or McIntosh be a very reliable number 3, do you think that level of confidence is there with Dejon Edwards? Or is there someone else we could see be that number 3 guy after McIntosh and Milton?
I mean, I think Dejon Edwards has done all you can kind of ask him to do with the opportunities that have been presented to him. But there does remain the question of just normally when he's carrying the football is kind of, what we would term as garbage time, right? Where the game is not competitive and, maybe not playing against the defensive starters or not running behind the offensive starters on the line. So I've heard good things about Edwards for a long time. I really like his vision. I like the way that he just kind of, makes a quick jump cut and goes. There's not much dancing around. He probably doesn't have like the top end speed of, some of these other guys coming in, but I think that would be a little bit to be determined. I would say if they feel like he's not cut out to, kind of take on that third back role, then they do have, Robinson and Paul, who just came in, who have the ability to come in and kind of prove themselves in that regard. But I would expect him to be the number 3 guy until something happens for him to create a reason not to be, because he's done very well to this point in his career.
Yeah, the biggest drum that we'll beat on the third running back is you got to be able to pass protect. So you got to know the offense well enough to be able to pass pro. And there's a lot of talented guys on this roster, but Dejon Edwards has been in the system longer than any of them. And so I think that definitely gives him a leg up along with the other things that Graham mentioned.
Thanks, guys.
Nick, you are on.
Can you hear me? Hello?
Yep.
All right, cool. So I got a question. I've been saying this all summer long, but I need to know what other people think. I'm out here saying that A.D. Mitchell is going to be the second best receiver in college football behind Jackson Smith and Jigba this year. And I just want to get other opinions on that.
I like your enthusiasm. Let's not forget that Jordan Addison at USC is there. You've got a couple guys over in Alabama. I think that it would be. I think he has potential there. I just think there's so many. He's gonna have to share the load and share targets with a lot of guys on the offense, and I just don't think that he's gonna get the volume that's gonna give him that highly, that number two or the best. I think he's gonna be one of the best and can be. I just don't think he's gonna get the volume that some of these other guys are gonna do just because of so many weapons that Georgia has on offense.
I agree. I think ability wise, that statement could be very true. I think if you take A.D. Mitchell and put him at Southern Cal, being the main pass catcher from Caleb Williams, I think that statement would be very true. But I also think the opposite's true. You take a guy like Addison and you bring him over to Georgia with Brock Bowers catching the ball at tight end, with Reed Gilbert coming in, with Darnell Washington there, and with the running backs there and the system that we run. I think stat wise that he probably won't be. Ability wise, I do think he is.
Yeah, I mean, everything. It's like A.D. Mitchell closed the year really strong last season. It sounds like he's done some good work on his body this offseason. I know he's made some very impressive catches through the first week of camp. I honestly, right now, I think Georgia as a defensive unit is having a hard time covering him in drills. But yeah, I think it all goes back to just kind of the situational stuff that these other guys have alluded to. Of I'm not sure that he'll see the number of targets that you would need to kind of bring up those stats, but he's definitely, I think, the solidified number one receiver for UGA. I would agree with that for sure. Hey, Scott, we got you added in here.
Hey, what's going on?
Not much, buddy. How are you?
I'm good, Ross. Just wanted to ask about the 17-point spread for Oregon, if you felt that was accurate. If not, what is? And the second question, what game down the stretch has you already circling it as a possible closer game than the point spread might have it?
I'll sit down on this one. Somebody else, go ahead.
I was actually tinkering around with my numbers and looking at a stat, and that's you look at your successful plays and how many points you're scoring, and the good offenses usually get on averaging over a 1.1 to 1.2 offensive points per successful play, and defensively the Georgia was elite, only allowing a half a point for successful play out on defense. And I sort of cooked up this numbers, and I had like Georgia's if Oregon's offense is a little better than Georgia's allowing typically over the last 3 years, and Georgia's offense is not as good. I mean, I've got like a 28-14, 28-13, or 28. I can't remember what it was, but I never really got it to even if maximum Georgia offense and versus an Oregon defense that is is bad, and Georgia's defense is elite again. I never got it comfortable where I thought 18. I think it got to 17 and a half or 18 at one point. So those are just numbers. It's a new season. I'm just looking at some priors and stuff like that. I think it's a little high. I mean, I think can they win that big for sure, but I think that number is pretty good too. And it'll be interesting. That'll be a good number to watch as the closing line comes in, and just see where the sharps start hitting it. Because right now there's really not a lot of people probably betting look ahead line a month out with so many potential for injuries and changes and things can happen. So, but I think that number is going to come down. The closing line is going to be closer to 15 and a half, 16, something like that. So I think it's a little high, to be honest. My 2 cents.
Yeah, but what you're not taking into account, Josh, is that Bo Nix is having fun in this new offense, and I wouldn't, be surprised if he's a dark horse for a Heisman. And so that for me is the reason that I think 17 is probably a little high.
I want to take a stab on the game. I think it's going to be closer probably in the spread. I would say probably that away game, Mississippi State coming off the Florida and Tennessee games back to back. I'm not saying that Mississippi State's going to win that game. I'm just saying it's probably going to be closer than probably what the spread's going to be.
Yeah, that stretch after the Florida game is probably that's a good point. It's a tough stretch, and they come off the bye, and then they go to Florida, and it's a tough little November run there.
Yeah, I agree with that one. That the Mississippi State one is the one that I think is just kind of it's a long way out to Starkville. That can possibly be a late night game where your body clock's a little messed up. But if there's anything in Georgia's favor, you could turn on the tape of the last time they played Mississippi State, where I think Mississippi State had like an 11-minute touchdown drive in that game. They really kind of controlled that game from a time of possession standpoint. They got out to the lead, and Georgia was kind of playing catch up all night, and I think Georgia ran for like -3 yards in that game. So
yeah, Monken actually talked about that game and today in the presser. He talked about how they, somebody asked him about the running backs, and he said, you got to be able to run the ball. He goes, I like to throw the ball, but you got to be able to run. And he specifically talked about that Mississippi State game and how he said they couldn't run at all. So, it's going to be a tough game, especially on the road.
Yeah, as far as the Oregon game goes, that line surprised me a little bit when it opened. I do think having Dan Lanning across from Kirby Smart, that's a very interesting angle to all this, because Lanning obviously has a very good knowledge of Georgia's roster. But if I'm Todd Monken, I'm going to Kirby Smart and I'm saying, you've installed this defense, dozens of times in your life. What's hard basically to install? What is it, where you see guys have trouble early in the season when you're installing your system, and try and pick on some of those things. But it could be a situation similar to that Tennessee game, I think in 2019, when Georgia went and Jim Chaney was in his first year as the offensive coordinator up in Knoxville. And, he schemed up a couple touchdowns really quick, just kind of based off of knowledge of what UGA did. And then they made an adjustment and kind of shut it down from there. I think that what Georgia has up front on the offensive line is going to be really tough for Oregon to handle. And I do think Oregon has some good pieces left over on their own offensive line, but I think Georgia's defensive line, it's going to be tough for Oregon to run the football. If they still had Travis Dye on that roster, I would feel a little bit better about their chances. But yeah, I'll put it this way: if that line got down to 13.5, I would hammer it pretty quick.
Yeah, the other thing that you got to look at is not just Dan Lanning, but that entire new staff, right? They're installing a new system. They've got a lot of kinks, that you have to work out when you're a new staff trying to overhaul a program and take over talent that maybe, that you didn't recruit, and you're trying to make it work in your system. And that's a tough ask against the Georgia, defense that they're going to roll out on September 3rd. So
I was going to say I actually kind of like the 17-point spread just because of that. You have a brand new head coach, you have a brand new offense, you have a brand new quarterback who has worked with offensive coordinator before, and then you look at both. I think somebody posted it earlier. I can't remember who it was, but if you go back and look at Bo Nix's stats against Georgia, with probably a better support around him on the Auburn teams that he was on than what Oregon has, I kind of like the 17-point spread, to be honest.
Well, it'll be 17 plus at halftime, and then we'll just do a Kirby death march and wind it down and not cover. So
that is always possible. Any other questions? Anyone else want to jump in here as a speaker?
Before you jump on there, how do you think to that point? Does Kirby want to embarrass Lanning? I don't know. That's a complete narrative there that we try to stay away from in betting, but that is a potential, like you said. That definitely the foot could come off the gas pretty quick.
I mean, I don't think he's going to try and embarrass him, but I don't think a 24-point or 30-point win would be like embarrassing for Oregon. I mean, Dan Lanning's season is going to
plenty of embarrassing, I'm sure.
Well, I actually think like once Oregon gets into conference play with Bo Nix, that he may be very successful just because he's finally not playing in the conference with defensive ends that are his speed. Like I think against Pac-12 defensive lines, he may be able to do some things that weren't really possible for him in the SEC. But I won't get too far off track here. We got a couple requested speakers.
Lamar had a question while we add Bank here too.
Okay, go ahead, Lamar. Sorry about that.
What's going on, fellas? What's going on tonight?
Chilling, man. How are you?
Everything is good, man. Got the bourbon in hand. But quick question for you guys. What do you think? What are your thoughts on Cale Gundy leaving Oklahoma and now the impact on Anthony Evans and his recruitment at Georgia? Do you think that kind of ties the bow on there, or we still have issues over there at Oklahoma in terms of bringing him in?
I'm going to defer to Jason on this one.
Honestly, it doesn't hurt, but from what I heard, the bow was already being tied before that happened. As in UGA had a ton of momentum before that even happened.
And Jason does have receipts on Dawgs Central saying that.
That is true. He has been saying that for a few
so
weeks.
It definitely doesn't hurt as far as Evans goes. And I can't remember his name off the top of my head right now, but I would already be on the phone with the other receiver that they have.
Fair enough. Yeah, I mean, I actually do think I put out a tweet about this the night all that stuff started leaking out. But if you look at, I mean, like he signed Adrian Peterson, like he signed a lot of guys out from under Texas's nose over the years. He was by far, I think, definitely the most experienced, but also probably the best recruiter on that OU staff. I think losing him probably is something that they would have preferred not to happen, especially as they kind of try to transition their roster to get ready to enter the SEC in a couple seasons. I think it's a tough spot, especially when you add in a new staff under Venables. Like the timing for something like that is never good, obviously. But I think it couldn't have been much worse for them, in my own opinion.
He is and has been a nasty recruiter for them. And Petaway, number 9 receiver in the nation. From Houston, Texas. Jaquays Petaway. I'd get him to come in with Evans as quick as I could because that guy can play. And also while we're on the Oklahoma deal, I posted not too long ago on the board that there is a 2023 quarterback that has ties to the state of Georgia and to the University of Georgia. And he is actually an Oklahoma commit, 5-star Jackson Arnold.
Oh, man. You dropped that bomb. I wasn't expecting you to put that one out tonight.
There you go.
So just for the Twitter spaces, and honestly, I mean, I'm just kind of finding this out. I don't know if we've been in contact with him at all. I don't know if he even has interest in Georgia anymore. But the kid grew up in Georgia, huge Georgia fans, the whole 9 yards. So I'm not saying we're getting them. I'm not saying we're flipping them. I'm not saying we're even trying to flip them. I'm just saying the background is there to go try and get them if we want to.
Well, there you go. That's a good tip.
All right,
Thanks
Bank.
for that, Jason. Yeah, Bank 6, we got you on here, man. Whenever you want to.
What's up, guys?
Not much,
My
man.
question, good. Just working, listening. Got a quick question. It's kind of similar to Lamar's. It kind of involves Anthony Evans as well, but Yazid Haynes as well, and the tight end position recruiting as well, all tied into one. Like, do y'all think we've changed what we look for as far as prioritizing speed with receiver based on how we recruit the tight ends now?
That's an interesting one, man. I think they're like that is definitely the theme to me of the wide receiver recruiting for this 2023 cycle, and even looking at a guy like Nye Carr for 2024, like it is definitely big time speed, and maybe that I have not thought about the correlation with the tight end position, but that's a really good point.
Well, and you actually hit big time on that, because if you guys remember, there's been plenty of Kirby Smart interviews where they ask him about running. I don't know the best way to describe it without sounding like I hate the offense, but without running kind of more this, some people say a mundane, laid back, run the ball, not a big passing attack offense. And I think we're not only changing the way we're recruiting the receivers as far as more speed, I think we've changed the way we recruit tight ends. Because, I mean, Kirby said multiple times, he's like, and Monken said the same thing today. He's like, I get paid to score points. And Kirby said the same thing about the offense. He's like, we've run the offense according to the personnel that we had. And he's like, I can't run an explosive offense without basically explosive players. So not only do I think you're right about us recruiting the receiver position differently, I think we're recruiting the tight end position differently. If you look at Brock Bowers and how we've used him, then we bring Gilbert in and how we're using him. Next up, Pierce Sperlin. I mean, people don't know if he wants to. I mean, he could easily be split out at receiver as quick as anybody. Same thing, Oscar Delp just got on campus. He's already throwing out. And he could split out wide. I think we're changing totally the way we're even recruiting the tight ends, from those, big bruisers, inline blocking, to guys that can do that, can also line up in the backfield and can split out wide, all in the same series.
I couldn't, as a stat nerd, I couldn't be more excited about what the offense looks like. I mean, it's modern, it's efficient, it's explosive. It's getting the ball to playmakers' hands in space. Anybody that hadn't listened to Monken's presser today, go to listen to it, because he's got so many great sound bites in there. But he just talks about the difference between Eric Gilbert and Brock Bowers, and I think Brock Bowers is a freshman and he's going to grow. And it's just like, if you look at what's going on in the NFL and just who wins big games in the NFL, it's the guys that have explosive players, and we're recruiting and we're looking like that kind of offense, which is like, if you told me that in 2019, where would we be? I mean, I wouldn't even believe you. But Monken's got a extension this year. He seems to be pretty happy, and we've just got elite players coming in at a lot of positions. So it's pretty damn awesome, if you ask me.
Cool. Well, thanks for that question, Bank 6. That was a really good one. Jim Page, we have added you as a speaker whenever you want to fire away.
All right, fellas, how y'all doing this evening?
Good, sir. How are you?
Good. Scott stole a little bit of my thunder. I got two kind of questions, comments. One's on the schedule. I know I've seen a lot of national media mention Tennessee's a possible upset for us. I actually don't see that game as scary. We're 34-1 at home. They're catching us late in the season, where I think depth matters from an injury standpoint and from a just season fatigue. And they don't have the depth to compete with us. But a game on the schedule that I am keeping my eye on is that South Carolina game. It's early. I think they'll be a lot better at quarterback with Radler. I know it's a question mark, but he's better than anybody they had. And I'll be honest, that game was tight late in the second quarter last year at home, and we had no answer for Josh Van. That dude ran up down the field on our all-world defense, and we pulled away late. And honestly, that's probably one of Stetson's worst games. JT came in that game and kind of saved us there. So I just kind of got that game in Columbia kind of circled. And the other comment I would like to mention is, wide receiver recruiting. If y'all know anything about where we are with Tyler Williams and Hakeem Williams. Thanks, guys.
Well, JT started that game. Stetson came in the second quarter or late in the first and threw a pick. It wasn't a great game, but JT played that game. And that game is certainly Tennessee and South Carolina seem to be the talking points of the national media. And they're both kind of different. Like you talked about, Tennessee's late in the year and South Carolina's early. I think that's a lot of national media trying to circle a game with, the high profile Spencer Rattler coming in and South Carolina's got a little bit of momentum coming. I just think that this is just a different team. This is not the Spurrier or Martin Rick South Carolina early season game. This is a much better program, both from an approach standpoint and from a talent standpoint. And yeah, they've got some players, but they just don't have you're talking about depth in Tennessee. I just don't think that South Carolina has the depth to get after us and make that a game. It's being at Bryce Williams. Yeah, sure. It's going to be hot if it's a day game. I think it is a day game, right?
It's at noon. It's going
to
be the surface of the sun in Columbia, South Carolina.
There's no hotter place on earth in September.
Yeah. I don't know if Marler's still here, but Marler's got a lot of things to say about South Carolina. So one of the things Stat Dude talks about is narratives, and that's that you brought up two perfect narratives of the year. Tennessee with Hendon Hooker and a lot of hype around that offense, a lot of hype. See how I did there, hype. And certainly South Carolina, just everybody wants to see them try to make an upset, but and it's not happening. South Carolina doesn't scare me at all.
So I'm on the Tennessee thing. I agree with that. Like last year they had Georgia up at home. I think that offense that they run, Josh Heupel may variate some things. I'm sure he will, but like that kind of, just hurry up, try and snap the ball with 38 seconds on the play clock deal. You saw Georgia look a little shell-shocked by it for a half a quarter or a quarter there, and then they settled in and they played fine. The anecdote to that hurry-up kind of style, that sort of Baylor coaching tree stuff that Heupel runs is good pass rushers and defensive backs who can play press coverage, and Georgia, has plenty of both. I do think the South Carolina game, if I had to pick a spot other than Mississippi State on the schedule, I think that would actually probably be the one I would pick, and it's just because, Williams-Brice is probably the most underrated college football atmosphere in the country. I've been there a few times. It's a miserable place to go watch a football game. I wouldn't personally recommend it on anyone, but it gets really loud. It can be a tough place to play. I just don't know what South Carolina is going to be. And the thing that would worry me from a schematic standpoint for South Carolina is, do I think that Spencer Rattler, is going to be a Heisman Trophy candidate? No, I don't. But Jaheim Bell at tight end is an absolute freak for them. He is an incredible athlete. I mean, they'll probably use him as a running back in certain moments or a wildcat guy. And then you've got Stogner, who also transferred over from Oklahoma. That could be a tough situation for young inside linebackers, which Georgia is going to have, or, could be a situation where, your safety is maybe manned up on one of those tight ends and just that tight end's going to have a little bit of a size advantage. So would I pick South Carolina in the upset right now? No, I wouldn't, but I do think that could be a game that's, kind of similar to like the Kentucky game was for Georgia last year, where, it's a one or two possession game at halftime, and it's pretty physical in certain junctures, and it's a little bit tougher for UGA to pull away than it will be against some of their other conference opponents.
Yeah, I think Jalen Carter eats in that game. That's a terrible offensive line.
I'll give you one anecdote, Graham. I do agree with you. I mean, it's a wild card game for me in some ways. But the one thing I look at is the week before South Carolina has to go to Arkansas. So if South Carolina
That's a
was
good point.
then with Georgia State and Charlotte, and then had Georgia on the schedule, then maybe you have some things that they haven't shown you. Maybe they haven't been put in a tough situation and gotten exposed in some of their weak areas. But I think them going to Arkansas in week 2, I think Arkansas is just going to smash South Carolina in a number of ways, and that'll be a good game to watch. But I think that Arkansas is really going to expose some of those weak areas that Georgia can then exploit the next week for South Carolina.
That's a great point. Yeah, I was not aware of that. And that is a long trip to and from Fayetteville. So thank you for pointing that out. There was another piece of. Is there another piece of that question that we missed, or did we cover it?
I asked about the two Williams wide receivers, Hakeem and Tyler,
right.
I believe.
Jason, you want to jump in on that one?
Yeah, we start off with Tyler Williams. He tweeted not too long ago, "I'm close to knowing where home is." And so, first off, I don't think that means he's like committing before his date in September that he has. I think his date in September has to do with his, I think, mom's birthday or something like that. So I don't think he recruits or commits before then. I think he'll wait for that September 27th. But to be honest, I've heard from more than one person that he's already a silent commit to UGA. That's another bomb we dropped tonight. How about that?
Bam.
So I'd be surprised if Tyler Williams doesn't come here. I mean, you have Clemson after him, a couple of other schools, but I'd be really, really, really super surprised if Tyler Williams doesn't come to UGA. As far as Hakeem Williams goes, it's always been everybody's always talked Texas A&M, UGA, Texas A&M, UGA. Pitt's in there a little bit, and then he spent 3 or 4 days, I believe, at Florida State before the dead period, and so now everybody's talking Texas A&M, Florida State. So it's always been Texas A&M, Georgia, Texas A&M, Georgia, and Pitt. We're now Texas A&M, Florida State, and Georgia. And so right now the constant in all of that is Texas A&M. So you almost always have to go with the constant, except in this NIL part. In this NIL age now, to where anybody can come in at the last second and bring in the highest offer and change somebody's mind, which Texas A&M is great at doing. So something else that I've heard, and which I hope is true, is that we're willing to do anything Texas A&M is willing to do to get Hakeem Williams. So right now, I would say under normal recruiting circumstances, Texas A&M has been the more constant team in all of it, so I would go with them. But it also wouldn't surprise me if we came in the last second and swiped them. Not trying to keep anybody's hopes up or create any false hope or generate any kind of anything, but and that's coming from someone very, very close to Georgia's side of Hakeem's recruitment, that we're willing to do whatever it takes to get him. So I would say the safe bet is Texas A&M, but don't be surprised if we try to come in and swoop them.
That's awesome. Thank you for that intel, Jason. All right, we're going to take one more question from our good friend Woodstock, and then we're going to wrap this thing up. Woodstock, you are on when you're ready. Woodstock, be sure to unmute yourself. All right, we may have lost Woodstock. Anyone else want to jump in here and ask a question before we wrap up? I will add the next person. Here we go. All right, Craig, you are being added as a speaker.
Buckle up.
Try not to say anything too crazy.
Children, put on your earmuffs. Craig is joining the space.
I just got back from the Bacardi tour, and I'm having a great time down in Puerto Rico. Hope you guys are doing well. Talking about the SEC East, doesn't it just seem like Roman Harper and all these other guys on the SEC network and ESPN or whatever, they're just trying to pick a Georgia versus the field type? I mean, it's really hard to go 12-0 back-to-back years, and I get that. But all this South Carolina, Tennessee, or what have you, it just seems like they're just trying to basically guess who is going to be the one team. And if Georgia went 11-1 this year, I don't think anybody would be shocked. It just seems like that's kind of what's going on here. And y'all may have already talked about this because I jumped in late, so feel free to tell me to shut up if that's already been discussed. And then with regard to wide receiver recruitment, what's to say that Kirby and Todd Monken don't just go like 10 years ago, New England Patriots, and just recruit a bunch of tight ends and maybe just have one or two wide receivers and not even care about receivers who sign? Sorry, I've got a little rum in my system right now, and I wanted to jump in because I'm sure Woodstock had a much better question, but I didn't want to leave you guys hanging, and I'll hang up and let you guys finish it off. Love the space.
No, you're great. Thank you for joining. Glad you're having yourself a nice lubricated time in Puerto Rico. Yeah, I mean, I think like if you look independently at Georgia's 12-game schedule and you go game by game, like you're going to favor Georgia by double digits in all of those games. The one that you would think would probably be the closest point spread, I would guess maybe at this moment, is Oregon, and that's over 17 right now. So yeah, I do think people in the media are paid to create talking points. I mean, I said before last season, like, I'm picking Georgia to go 11-1. If I look at the schedule, I think it's 12-0, but it's just really hard to go undefeated in college football. It's even harder to do it 2 years in a row in the regular season. I mean, it's easy to forget that last year was Georgia's first ever 12-0 regular season. I mean, obviously the regular season was 11 games for a lot of college football history, but still, it's not easy to do. I don't think, I mean, like, if I was trying to pick a game that Georgia would lose, we kind of talked about this earlier, it would probably be Mississippi State. The wide receiver question, we actually talked about that a little bit earlier. Bank Six was one of our speakers, and he kind of pointed out, like, it seems like Georgia is maybe treating its tight end recruitment for the bigger bodies and going very, very speed focused on the wide receiver recruits, which is definitely a fair observation. Any of y'all have other thoughts on that?
No, I mean, I just if anybody's still with us, I just can't. And I just love how we are getting. I love where our offensive weapons are. It's like, sure. I mean, George Pickens was an elite player, and looks like he could be an elite player at the next level. But I just love the fact that we've got Brock Bowers coming all the way from California and is probably going to be first team All-American this year. We got Eric Gilbert, and he got him on campus and kept him on campus, and he could have an explosive year. We got Pierce Spurlin. I mean, just this is the offense that it looks modern, and I would, if you want to, line up and play zone block and play man ball, with, try to get you a 5-star running back. But, I just think that running backs are not a dime a dozen by any stretch, but we've got a great talent at the running back room. And so I'm just not worried about it. I still think we could, there's obviously, you can always get a better player to stretch the field, but I just think that Georgia's offense has got every weapon it could possibly need. And, with some improvement on the O-line, like you could talk about, I just think this offense could take the lid off this year and really be amazing.
Yeah, and the other thing is, I mean, I'm not saying this as, to poke holes in Bama's wide receiver injuries, but the depth at skill position that Georgia has built, you have to be excited about, right? I mean, there's mismatches that you can put all over the field, and whether you have a 1,000-yard receiver or not, that you have the scheme and the players to stretch a defense And you also know that that those players run, a couple levels deep too. And so I'm with you, Josh. I'm really excited about where the offense is.
Jason, did you have anything to say on that one?
Yeah, I guess I'll start letting people get used to me being the one that was. I'll just speak my mind. I don't care. Number one, how the hell did Roman Harper get on the SEC network? He just needs to shut up. Okay. Number two, I think it was funny actually what Coach Munkin said earlier. He was actually asked about running at his presser today. He was actually asked about running 4 tight end sets. And what did he say?
He said you can't do that too often. You'll have every wideout in the portal.
Yes, thank you. You have every wide out on the portal if you do that. So I thought that was a great answer. And I know John did too.
For sure. Well, cool. I think with that, we are going to wrap this deal up. Thank you all for jumping in and listening, and for everyone that spoke. Always a huge thanks to our Dawgs Central subscribers. If you guys have not hopped on over to dawgcentral.com yet, come and check it out. We're sharing, these types of conversations and recruiting intel, practice intel, all of that good stuff every day. There's over a dozen of your favorite independent UGA content creators on the website right now. And we are still running our launch special, which is 6 months for $33.18. I'm sure most of you will love that price.
All right.
Yeah.
Screenshot. Anybody still in the spaces and is not a subscriber, screenshot it. A free FTMF hat to the next 2 that subscribe for $33.18 for the 6 months, dude. Let's go. Come on.
Bam. There you go.